Angela Chu with the Chinatown SRO Collaborative.
Clifford Gilmore, Central City SRO Collaborative.
Good morning, Raul Fernandez Vargasal with the SRO Families United Collaborative.
Hi, I'm Ben Munchinger with the Life Foundation. I'm visiting today about privacy. Oh, actually, this is September.
My name is Judah with the nonprofit operator of Mission Housing.
Hi, good morning. Diana Martinez, Mission SRO Collaborative.
My name is Michael Penner. I'm with the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. I too am just visiting.
Dan Jordan, tenant representative.
Peter Keith, Deputy City Attorney, Legal Advisor.
Sam Patel with Pullover.
Bruce Burge, operator.
Jordan Davis, tenant rep.
Nicole Rossini, DBI.
Trina Gomez, DBI.
All right, thanks everybody. Next item is approval of the minutes from the October meeting. Please take a minute to take a look at the minutes. Any suggestions or corrections? All right. Minutes look good. Great. All right. Barring any further comment, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the bylaws.
Wait, there might be a motion to approve the minutes.
Oh, sorry. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make it.
Jordan Davis. Second? Is there a second? Diana Martinez. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Unanimous. Item 4, approval of the bylaws. So we've been going over these bylaws, and all of the suggestions that were made at the last meeting tried to incorporate in this version. So let's take a minute and take a look at these.
Yeah. I hate to be that person, and I think someone would know better than I would, but 10 days notice that I noticed that the bylaws went out at 9:01 a.m. on Monday before last, and that might mean that we didn't get it within 10 days depending on certain interpretations.
So Peter, the question is that...
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, Peter Keith, Legal Advisor. I think that given the meeting didn't start until after 9:01 this morning.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
And there is an error here, like the SRO task force will elect the chair and will elect the chair from the 13 members. We only have 12 as according to the bylaws,
right.
And
so that should be 12. The word "and" should not be in there also.
And we also talked on, Jamie, I know we talked on email between the members present and quorum standard for passing things and like looking at a compromise, and I really believe we should take a look at a compromise because there's strong feelings on both sides.
And refresh my memory, what was the suggestion?
The suggestion was, well, if it was members present, then it could be down to 4 if we have a bare quorum, 4 to pass if we have a bare quorum, and 7 if we use the quorum standard.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like somewhere in there, like a happy medium, like 6 if 11 or less members are present. So that way it's a we can get things moved along. And I know that there's actually room to. It's perfectly legal to have members present and or quorum standard for advisory boards.
Okay. Yeah, Jordan did suggest that to me in an email, and I checked with Peter. Peter asked me to check with Judy Boyajian, who is a rules expert, but she's also semi-retired, and I did send it to her, and she did say she would take a look at it, but she hasn't.
I can report on on some follow-up.
Okay.
For a purely advisory body, which this is, the charter requirement that sets the normal quorum at 7% of the full membership doesn't necessarily apply. So there's not, I would say, it is an area where it's likely permissible.
Okay, so this is a suggestion where the a compromise between having a bar of 7 votes to pass a measure.
And a bar like of members present, which that standard, like, you know, if we assuming we have bare quorum would mean 4, like only 4 to pass. I know Bruce brought this up, and we're I think a good happy compromise is not to have 4, but like if we're like short but within quorum, like having it be only 6 votes to pass if it's 11 or less.
Okay, so Peter, that is permissible?
It's not clearly illegal.
Okay.
I mean, I can't predict exactly what would be done. The charter, again,
Okay.
the charter provision has been interpreted to apply to bodies that have, essentially, I'm going to say, the power to pass binding
Non-advisory.
binding measures.
Yeah.
This is an advisory body, so there's an argument that does not apply. And I think a fairly solid argument. I can't say to certainty that it would necessarily, that if we enacted that bylaw, it would to a certainty be lawful. I also can't say it would be unlawful.
Okay. So, do other people have comments on this idea? Let's see, or we don't necessarily have to constrict it to just this idea. If other people have other things they want to talk about on the subject. Anybody else?
And
Yeah.
sorry to like speak again, Jordan Davis, but because there are like 13 members in Article 1, Section 5, would that trigger another 10-day notice if we had to correct it?
This is Section 5.
Chair, the SRO task force and will elect the chair from the 13 members.
Oh,
mistake.
no, that's not, no, because I don't think that that's a notice problem, because the issue of the number of people in the body is something that's been, that issue has been given notice of.
That correction we could make.
Yes.
Okay. Other comments? Well, that's good. I mean, we spent some time on this document, so hopefully people feel that their ideas have been incorporated.
Angela here. I was wondering, since we take out Section 6,
Yeah.
Would then section 7 become 6 and 8 become 7, or do you just put the 7 in?
No, we would make those changes after the change is approved. So, item 6 was stricken, but it hasn't formally been adopted that it's stricken, so then, after we vote to approve the bylaws, then, that's a good point, section 7 would become 6, section 8 would become 7. And we would have that same issue with Article 3, with section 7 being stricken. The next section would become section 7. Other comments? Okay.
Just the only one comment I want to make is that I want to like revisit the vote threshold probably soon.
Okay.
And I just really think we need to hit that compromise.
Okay.
If it's lawful,
Okay.
which it probably is.
Okay. Well, are there any motions that you want to make on the bylaws?
There would have to be a motion to approve with these amendments, or a motion, or if Jordan wishes to offer a motion to approve with these amendments and the additional. That would be the next step to take. This motion.
Jordan Davis again. Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I wanted to put that provision in there, it would probably trigger another 10-day notice because it is substantial.
No, because there's been a list of
I'm talking about the vote threshold.
No, I think it's fine because there's already amendments to that section that have been proposed.
So,
I don't think there needs to be additional notice.
So, here, my motion that I would like to make would be to approve the bylaws with the following amendment, that if less than between 7 and 11 members are present, it will only need, a motion will only need 6 to pass.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion?
I second the motion.
Angela seconds the motion. Discussion? Any discussion? All right. So, we have a motion to approve these bylaws, one amendment, that if
Between 7 and 11
7 and
members.
11 members are present,
Only
then
6 need to
votes
pass.
need to pass.
Otherwise, it needs 7 to pass. If there's 12 members, it needs 7 to pass. If 7 to 11, then 6 to pass.
Okay. And this is for Article 4 voting, Section 1. Any other discussion? Okay, I'm going to close discussion. We ask for public comment. Seeing no public comment. All those in favor of approving the bylaws with this amendment on voting threshold, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4.
What was the vote total?
7 to 4.
And under the current bylaws, 8 are needed to pass a motion.
Okay, so motion fails.
Motion is not passed.
Motion is not.
Motion does not pass. All right. Would someone else like to make an amendment? I mean, a motion? Is there any other discussion on the bylaws?
So the motion, the bylaws are going to be passed with these amendments. Someone needs to make a motion for that purpose.
Right, with the right.
The already distributed amendments.
Right, so can the chair make a motion? All right, I'm going to make a motion to approve these bylaws with only the minor corrections that that we were discussing earlier. No major amendment to approve these bylaws. And then we can always revisit other subjects like voting thresholds at subsequent meetings. Is there a second? Okay, Diana Martinez, second. Any discussion? Public comment? All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 6 in favor. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion fails 6 to 4. Okay, well, we're going to need bylaws because we have fewer members. We're at an impasse here. It is difficult because the threshold is so high before Bruce.
Yeah, I would make a motion to amend it to put it back to, it says 14, but I thought it was 13 members. Because I thought we only lost one from the city groups being consolidated. And I previously brought up made a motion that failed to add an owner to the table, owner-operator to the table. And I would renew that motion to make that amendment. And then I think the bylaws would pass.
So, try to get this straight. I think we lost 2 people from the city because the department's consolidated.
Okay, I was under the impression it was just one to consolidate, two consolidated to one, but either way.
Actually, you had 3 into 1.
Okay, well, fair enough.
So,
So we'd have 13 people at the table.
So you would add a property owner seat.
Owner-operator.
Okay.
For profit.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second from Sam, motion from Bruce. Any discussion? Public comment? Jordan?
Just want to say that not only would I oppose this, but it would need we would need to amend the ordinance coming up to re-up it in order to even do this.
Yeah, I think we discussed that last time. Because right now there's legislation that's been introduced by Supervisor Kim for the 12 seats that we've all discussed here, and that was introduced a couple weeks ago. I remember we had Kitty here from Jane's office last time. So with that reminder, thank you. Any other comment? Any public comment? Okay, on the motion to adopt the bylaws with 13 members and adding a property owner seat, raise your hand if you're in favor. 4. Okay, all those opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 opposed. So that motion fails. Need 8 to pass. Other discussion? Now, we've been at this now for a few months. So I would really urge people to, I mean, we'll have to keep discussing this every month if we can't come to get 8 votes on this.
I have to say, if the ordinance passes, reconstituting the task force as having 12 members, then all we'll need are 7 votes to adopt bylaws. But at this point, we still need 8.
Really? Okay.
Well, because it'll be a different body, so it'll simple majority can be used to adopt bylaws.
Okay.
Problem is, our current bylaws
Have a really
set
high
as
rate.
8, so.
Which is the reason why, really, we wanted to look at this, because the threshold was so high. Is there any other? Does anyone else have another idea of a way to proceed? Yeah.
Since the issue seems to be that, I'm sorry, Nicole Rossini, it seems to be the number of folks that actually attend the meeting and hitting quorum for votes. What if it was 50% plus 1 of the attending members instead of it being, could it be that?
Well, we kind of, Nicole staffed this task force in the past, and Jennifer has taken over from her. Jennifer's out today, so we have Trina today. Nicole can provide help too. No, Nicole, we did. That's what kind of the earlier. I think most people are aware of the difference. So we're voting to. We have to meet the current threshold in order to change it, essentially. So both of those options we've been talking about for a couple months. Any other thoughts? Okay. Without objection, I'll table this until we have our new ordinance, and then we'll have to revisit it. Okay. Rome wasn't built in a day. We have some announcements. The ordinance has been introduced and it's working its way through. The SRO directory is part of the packet, so we've been making corrections to that, so hopefully everything is set for the directory. And then,
it looks like the item that I was supposed to follow up on as part of the administrative announcements.
Yeah.
Your key legal advisor. There have been a few questions about various procedural issues that I wanted to answer for the group. Some of them are other legal advice issues. There was a question about whether the SRO task force is permitted to take a position on ballot measures. It is not. It's just a general rule that city resources cannot be used pro or con in favor of ballot measures. So as a body, we can't take a position on ballot measures. Of course, we can give advice on legislation before the board or particular commissions, but when something is before the voters, this group cannot take a position under city law.
And Jordan Davis, just clarifying, that's only I'm guessing that rule only applies when it's before the voters, but after it's passes the election's over and it passes and becomes a matter of public policy, and I guess it's permissible to discuss this. We're going to discuss later.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, once it becomes a part of city law, it's just sort of it's advocating a vote one way or another that is the problem, or that is the prohibition.
All right, thank you.
In the charter. There was also a question about when we do our reply all emails, and whether that could raise a potential Brown Act issue, because it would be a communications between a majority of the group. We are allowed to do reply all on procedural matters, like whether scheduling, whether people are going to show up so that there's a quorum, that's permissible. That advice is in the good government guide that our office provides to all city officials. But what you can't do in a reply all email is discuss substantive issues. Like, for example, this issue of, how many people should be needed for quorum as parts of an amendment of a bylaw. That's something that we would not want to discuss. But you can, again, what you can discuss is, yes, I'm going to be at the meeting. Oh, can we reschedule because we're not going to have a quorum? Issues like that can be discussed in reply.
So what you're saying is that it's something logistical, that's okay, but if you're making an argument about an issue, that's not okay.
That's correct.
All right.
And then there was also a, following up on a topic that we had at a past meeting, there was a question about whether the rent board has dealt with the question of whether SRO tenants may be charged for their guests' showers. I contacted the rent board. The rent board has not said something one way or the other on that issue.
Okay.
So I believe that's everything
They're very talented
that
at
I was
that.
going to follow up on.
All right, well, thank you very much. And there was also a link to that good government guide. I think we included that in one of the announcements. Are there any other questions on, yeah?
So, Morgan, but is this the right time to talk a little bit about the Director of Services One
Yeah,
Edition?
yeah.
Okay, so I noticed on homeless resources,
Okay.
page 17, the lower part, we're missing Compass Family Services, which is the one in charge of the coordinated entry service.
Can you say it again?
Okay, so on homeless
What's it called?
resources, we're missing there Compass Family Services.
Compass.
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 So they are the ones in charge of the coordinated entries system.
Compass Family Services.
Yeah, 37 Grove.
Do you know them, Trina?
No, sorry.
Okay, we'll add that one.
Thank you, and okay, I have the contact info if you need it again.
Okay. Can you email that to me?
Yes.
Oh, great. All right. Yeah.
Sam Patel. So this Directory of Resources Services, we've been working on it for almost 2 years now, I think. Can we put an end to it and put it out to the general public? I mean,
Well, this does appear on our website.
Yeah.
it does.
So that's,
Yeah.
it's been posted, so what we've been doing is updating it, and the idea is, once a year, we check in it with updates. So it was posted last year, and then we came together, and then we had a lot of various things people wanted to change, correct, or add. So that's what we've been doing the last couple of months. So all these things are going to be added.
And what website is that on?
That's on the SRO task force.
Okay.
Bruce, and then Jordan.
Yeah, Raul, on page 18, under Youth Resources, Compass Family Services, is that the same thing?
Page 18?
Yeah, Youth Services on the right side, Compass Family Services, is that the same or no?
No, for what I see, I mean, the name is the same, the address is different, so I think that address is outdated. And the reason why I want to bring it to the homeless resources rather than the youth resources is because that is the entry point for homeless people seeking housing.
It's fine, I'm just asking. if it was
Yeah,
the same.
no, it sounds like it's the same one, but the address is different
Should
because
we-
they were on Grove Street.
Do you think we should list it under both?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and the 995 Market address is definitely outdated.
Okay. 37 Grove.
No, it's another program.
Yeah. Trina, is plugged into some of that network too, so she's been helping us with update the directory. Do you have anything?
No, the only thing I want to say about this, like if we get this, if we get these corrections in and we complete this, we should really distribute paper copies to we should partner up with the Department of Homeless Services to provide some paper copies to the SROs. Now, I'm not a fan of wasting trees or anything. I know it's like that's a sensitive issue for a lot of us here, but I just because there's like a big digital divide and there's a lot of people who don't have as much internet access. That could be a really good suggestion would be for DBI and HSH to partner in distributing this.
Yeah.
One of the ideas I had was to work with Diana's group and get some, just to start out slowly and see what the response is to giving out some paper copies.
We could pass them out when we do our door-to-door outreach, and we can also have them available at our monthly tenant meetings.
So I think that would be a good start. And then once we get more of that going, other ways to do outreach.
Totally fine with that. I know there's a reproduction department where you like make it.
They charge us too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I just want to make sure this is done like as cost effectively and we don't waste as much kill as many trees as possible.
Okay.
Angela here. If we done with the revision on this guide, perhaps we can start getting it translated into the major languages.
That would be a good next step too.
Hi, Clifford Gilmore. I actually think for our program it would be helpful for our leadership program if we could also have copies because they run monthly meetings in their hotels.
Okay.
And I think it's a good distribution of the information.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. So, Trina, can you help me keep tabs on that? All right. Is there any further discussion on item 5? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along to item 6, service animals and SROs.
Yes, Clifford Gilmore for the record. I know I actually mentioned this some time ago about it seems that in some instances people are interchanging service animals with companion animals, and I know that happens in some THC hotels. So I actually would like to hear more people comment on this subject, but I would hope that we could get some clarification on how people are using this and what impacts that they're having. I do know that in some THC hotels there are certain breeds of, particularly dogs, not cats, that sometimes are off leash, and there have been people who've been bitten and things of that nature. So, I know that there's a requirement that pet owners have to actually have the proper licensing, the shots, all those kind of things. But it also becomes a management issue in the buildings as well as behavioral issues of the owners. So I'd just like to have a further understanding of how this can be improved. And that's really why I was hoping that we could talk about this and see if we can, get some traction on it.
All right, great. Has anybody else come across this issue in their hotel or other hotels that they've come across? Yeah.
Dan Jordan for the record. Building I am in, we're allowed to have service animals as long as it's either a dog or a cat. And we have to get special permission from the owner of the building to do so. The dog or cat has to be licensed, has a shot, and also has to have the service animal tag. I know because I have a service animal.
All right. Other discussion? Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Davis for the record. The only thing I'm gonna say here is I know THC doesn't allow for companion animals, which could be like I know they're considered pets or something like that. But the in terms of service animals, And as an animal rights and disability rights advocate, we need to put deference towards the people who certify the need for these animals and certify that this is a suitable service animals. I'll say I do not feel comfortable leaving that judgment with the owner unless the service animal is actually disruptive and actually doing harm.
Okay, so thank you, Dan. Bruce?
Yeah, I believe, and I could certainly be wrong, that there's a specific definition as to what a service animal is and or is not, and perhaps Peter could help us with that, maybe under the ADA or.
This is outside my scope.
Yeah. But
so, generally, the city doesn't. This is something where I think we would need someone who's more of an expert in.
Right. So
in private and public accommodations and hotels.
So get somebody from the SPCA. I'm sure they would be well versed.
Yeah, or possibly somebody who advises essentially apartment owners, landlords, and tenants.
How about the health department?
So Larry Kessler at the Department of Public Health. What we typically do is rely on the Mayor's Office on Disability. We refer people to them for these issues that come up in restaurants and things like that. They're pretty good at these definitions.
So do you know that there is or maybe isn't a specific definition?
If there is one, then it would, I think they would be the agency that would be most helpful in determining differences between service animals and companion animals. We've had issues in some of these SROs with different, not just dogs and cats, but other things.
There was a goat in one room.
We've had rodents,
tenants who
companion
have rats.
Yeah.
Really
Whether or not it
control.
meets the definition of a service animal or a companion animal, we've relied on MOD for that.
Cliff, do you think that if we invited somebody from MOD, Mayor's Office of Disability, that would help us get a better understanding of this agenda item?
Well, I think that'd be a good start.
Yeah. Sam?
Sam Patel, my suggestion would be to get somebody from MOD and from the SPCA.
Yeah.
I think both of them together might give us a better idea.
And Larry, do you have a contact then?
Not for that particular issue. We do for other things. That on the building construction side, I have contacts, but Jim Whipple, you may know Jim, but I don't know.
Jim Whipple?
Yeah, he works over there. I don't know. He used to work there. But that's mainly for the construction of buildings for MOD. So I don't have any particular contacts.
Okay. Well, we can look for somebody, definitely. Okay, so we will try to find someone, an expert that can help us understand this better. Is there other discussion on this item?
There's just one question for the Gilmore. So if we have MOD come, I mean, will we also have someone from the SPCA at the same time, or would we have them come in different meeting times?
It just depends on
availability.
Yeah.
Time. Okay, that's fine.
Which would be better?
Well, I don't favor one or the other. I think I agree with Sam. I think having both would be to our advantage to different perspectives.
Sam Patel, I think both of them at the same time would probably be more productive.
I agree.
All right. See what we can do. Any other further comment? Okay, seeing none. Item 7, Prop C implementation. Proposition C was recently passed last week regarding services for the homeless. We have a couple of speakers that or people to help us understand it that were Jordan invited. Maybe you could introduce yourselves and
maybe I can start with the ambassador to Ben later, who is like much more, he's better versed than I in Prop C. But just to provide a little bit of context for those of you that are not quite familiar with Prop C, so that was a citizen initiative. It's spearheaded by a coalition on homelessness, so it's one of the organizations in the SRO Families United Collaborative. The concept in a nutshell would be to tax corporations that make over 50 million a year, 0.5%, right, annually, so of gross receipts. So basically that will bring about $300 million a year for homeless services. Most of that goes into housing, about 15%, so they calculate that will bring housing for about 4,000 families. Part of this component, the funding would go to mental health services, eviction prevention, shelter navigation centers, and whatnot. So it passed last time we checked, I think it was the 6th count. It had a slightly over 60%. So that shows like a lot of popular support. I think the community is really behind this initiative. So what is important here is a lot of, SROs are like an intrinsic part of the language of the legislation, right? So there's components there about SRO acquisition, about definitely like the family living in SROs to have access to this housing. And of course what we know is that there is like a pending lawsuit. So we feel confident that it's going to pass this hurdle, and the monies are being held by the controller at this point in time. So I think like this is important to start the discussion here about the master leasing of SROs, about SRO acquisition, and obviously how to have our families having access to these services once the funds have been released. And Ben, you have been there from day one, you know. Leasing in and out.
I think you summarized it very nicely, so thanks for inviting us, Jordan. And as you can tell, it's a very large change in our city. It's a wonderful change. And as Raul mentioned, we're very confident that this lawsuit will not undermine the measure ultimately, because the California Supreme Court ruled on the crux of an upcoming lawsuit, which would be the 50% threshold. That was what the California Supreme Court changed last year. They said measures brought to ballot by signature only require a 50% threshold. And they're very clear on that. So the lawsuit is maybe time consuming, but it's no chance that it's going to pass, or that it's going to be supported and that the measure will be struck down. So really what we're trying to do is get everything in order for when that process is completed, and forming groups of folks who can work on this. And that might be something that this group wants to be involved with. I wanted to read this piece of the measure, which is probably the most relevant to all of you, which is that this 50% of the funding is allocated towards housing, and part of that is the acquisition, rehabilitation, master lease, and operation of SRO buildings or portions thereof, newly acquired or master leased after January 1st, 2019. And the associated protection of extremely low and very low income households, especially households with seniors, veterans, persons with disabilities, or immigrants. And it goes on to say that this is also keeping existing tenants. That's an important goal of the measure, so there's nothing in here about making it such that it's only for the extremely low income folks that this is meant to serve. And we're here both to kind of be a part of any discussion that you want to start today, answer questions, and be available to follow up.
Yeah, thank you very much. And first, yeah, like a lot of, I sent an email to a couple of you about like what we discussed about like talking about propositions, and you're free to talk about the substance of this since it already passed, so we're not, so just feel free to do that. But one of the things I've been looking at, that's two things. One is the Prop F, which passed in June, like could be helped by this because of the because there's money in there for eviction defense. The other thing is one of the big concerns in like a lot of these master lease SROs is that like people on SSI and like disability are still paying more than 50% of their income towards rent. And from what has been explained to me is because the building's master lease, the city really can't afford to have a percentage-based rent. So this would allow for acquisition, actually for the city to buy out these master leased hotels and like put them under, I guess, in a land trust or some, like take them off the speculative market and take them like cut out the middle person. So if you could speak a little about that.
Well, I think that the way I outlined it is the way the law, is going to be dictated around it. The details are what we need to figure out, and I think that people who are involved in the SRO ownership and operation are a part of that, and I think all of us here who are interested in what happens to the folks who are living in these buildings are part of that. And we're hoping that whatever we do, it gives the most housing to the most people who need it. And with the resources we have, takes the best advantage of this fantastic opportunity to give an adequate amount of housing to folks in the city. And so, not to not answer your question, but that's not determined yet. It's basically the answer. We're hoping that we can get as much housing for folks who are extremely low income. It's enough money to be able to do things like that, for sure.
And there's also a few other major major things other than Prop C that would likely play into this. One is Prop 1 and 2, which passed in California, which would I know it would allow for more veterans and also affordable housing, which is Prop 1. Prop 2 does something that allows the millionaires portion of millionaires tax to be allocated for funding for housing with for people who are neurodivergent, so like mental health, in other words. So that can play into that. I know we're probably going to have to look for ways to like sort of play into that and like anticipate that there'll be other help too. And also another thing that might happen next year is that will likely happen next year is the expiration of the Twitter tax break, which it would only be appropriate, and I'm going to talk with Supervisor-elect Haney about this, about bringing it in for homeless services and like helping to augment the good work of Prop C. So there's like opportunities to augment it and to also tie us over until we eventually win this lawsuit.
And in the meantime, I'll let you speak. In the meantime, just talking about how we can hit the ground running, right? You know, getting vacant units available to folks through the master lease program and other things that we think really make a big difference.
Great. Diana?
When does Prop C officially go into effect?
On January 1st. And that's when the revenue will be collected. The controller has said they will wait to distribute the revenue until a lawsuit has been concluded, whatever lawsuit that shall be.
So what did the controller say?
The controller said that they would wait to distribute the funding until any lawsuit brought to bear was resolved.
But they'll begin the taxing January 1st regardless of the lawsuit?
That's right. The measure creates a fund, and it's called the Our City, Our Home Fund. That would be I think that it would actually be put in an interest-bearing account now, but the idea is that the fund will accumulate until distribution. And in some ways, I guess having a little extra at the beginning is good, though of course we'd rather it start as soon as possible. Yeah.
Sam?
Sam Patel. So which department is going to be controlling this?
Mayor's Office on Housing.
So the mayor's, it's not the Department of Homelessness.
They also get funding, but I think the housing goes mostly through NOHC.
So NOHCD is sort of going to be the gatekeeper overall, so it's going to be coordinated through them.
Through the housing portion, the 50% that's allocated to housing will go through MOHCD for the most part.
Okay, but so there's other services with the other 50%.
That's right. That's right. A quarter of the funding goes towards mental health and substance-related services, and then the other quarter is split between shelter, prevention services, and sort of hygiene and other miscellaneous services.
And is that going through the other department?
Right. Part of it's through Department of Public Health, all the mental health and substance use, and HSH has a large remainder of the rest.
And there is like Raul Fernandez for record, there is a monitoring committee, and then that monitoring committee is supervised by board of supervisors and ultimately by the mayor. So everything is written in the legislation very clearly.
You know, Jenny was a part of, Jenny Friedenbach, who's the director of Coalition on Homelessness, I think she was a member of this task force at one point, and just worked on the Families Collaborative with Angela for many years.
Angela, I would like to see for discussion on housing for SRO families, because so far there are not a lot of housing created, permanent affordable housing. being offered to SRO families. And I would like to hear some discussion about how we can utilize the funding and think of ways to provide more permanent affordable housing for families.
And when are you asking about this in terms of like below market rate levels, like 55% AMI?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. For a step up.
I agree with Angela, particularly with undocumented families, because if you're mixed status or if no one in your family has citizenship status, you don't qualify for like Section 8 or, and that's one mode where we've been able to get families houses through Section 8, but it doesn't quite work for families who are undocumented.
That's right, and that should be an ongoing piece of the work. And when we wrote the measure, we wrote in there, I think it's actually right up there, that every reasonable accommodation should be made to include folks who are without identification or documentation. And we checked in that we couldn't write into the law something like including undocumented folks because it's federally illegal, but because it's a local measure, we also don't have to deal with the same things that Section 8 does. So because it's a sanctuary city and we have such strong political will around inclusion, I have a pretty good feeling about that. We need to make sure that it's in the room. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other discussion?
And this, the only thing I want to say is that for SRO owners, this actually would help them because it would help. There's actually funding to help rehab SRO units and get them up to code. And I know that's something that SRO owners struggle with a lot. And with that bit of seed money, it could open up, activate a lot more units.
Right.
Although there is a one thing that I would like to eventually see, and I know this might be years from now, is for not only families but for seniors, disabled, and people with specialized health need to be able to like move on from SROs because it never was supposed to be. We want to help the people there, but who are there now, but it was never supposed to be permanent housing.
Other comments?
Yeah, Clifford, excuse me, Clifford, for the record. I know that in our program, we have been talking about that very dynamic that we talk about people aging in place, but we certainly there's some tenants who actually have proven that they can actually be self-sufficient, and that step-up housing appears to be something that needs to be part of the overall housing discussion. And to add to that, then if people are actually able to sort of graduate to independence, then you're still opening up other SRO units to people who are homeless. Because so it seems like it's a win-win situation all the way. And so I think Jordan is exactly right. That's something that we're experiencing too, that we have people who actually took advantage of the Move On program and actually were able to move to independent living. And so I think that would be helpful, I think.
I think that's a great thing to include in the discussion. And part of the opportunity that this affords us is the opportunity, excuse me, it's the smoke outside. Part of the opportunity is that we can re-envision parts of the system and emphasize aspects that we know need more attention. We've had this system that has been based around a severe scarcity, and we just recently kind of integrated it to a larger extent, but a lot of what we've been operating from can be improved as we become able to provide those resources at the scale necessary. And I think things like step-up housing are in that category, where as we see, like we're building the system out, how can we make sure that the existing system is also best integrated and made to serve everybody? And I think we're going to be able to utilize this time while this lawsuit is happening to plan that out very well and work with city departments and work with people in the private industry to make sure it's all ready to go. So I'll leave my contact information with somebody, and if folks want to follow up, please do. And I know that we see each other in other venues as well, and we'll be in touch. This is an important thing. Is there anything else I can answer or speak to while I'm still here? Or I will.
All right, that sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, we'll move to the next item, which is item number 8, reports from SRO Collaborative. Angela, can you get us started?
I think the major thing for our families is that they have been very active and on the Pop C campaign, and they're very happy now. That's with Tony.
Cliff?
No, we have no reports at this time.
All right.
Yep.
Raul?
Quick report, Raul Fernandez with the SRO Families United Collaborative. This last Saturday we took our families for an outing, China camp. So we had about 100 people attending. We had it was a beautiful sight. Took a couple of buses there, we had piñatas for the children, lunch, just games and whatnot, raffles. They were really happy because many of them don't have the opportunity to leave the city at all. Some of the children were surprised that there was water around them. They didn't even know that, So it was a good opportunity for families to enjoy themselves. Today, Chinatown CDC is conducting a training for our organizers. It's going to be based about tenant rights. So we're looking forward for that one. Also in Coalition on Homelessness, we've been working in collaboration with Bobby with a few items on 53rd. And she's been tremendous help.
All right, good.
Things are moving forward. We're really happy to have her back. We talked a little bit about Prop C, and the last part is that we're planning our annual retreat for December, mid-December, in which we're going to start developing our 5-year plan for the collaborative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Deanna Martinez.
Yes. We have a new position, which is an administrative assistant position, and it has been vacant for about 2 months, but just yesterday, a new administrative assistant started with us at the Mission SRO Collaborative, and we also, this week, posted for a new position for a tenants' rights counselor, an additional one. So, we've been able to grow this past year, and it's really exciting news.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other topics people would like to see at future meetings?
I guess we're on item number
9.
Item number 9. So, if I may, there's Prop 1 and 2, which I alluded to in the discussion, and I wish I had mentioned that as a possible topic because it's statewide and involves funding for various forms of housing, so that might be a good discussion. And I want to keep on the rent payment methods thing because THC tenants and a lot of tenants in other hotels are banned from paying by check, and I feel like there needs to be a balance between flexibility of payment methods and making sure rent is paid on time. And I believe it can be.
This is not on the agenda for today.
I know.
We will talk about it. We will consider it for next time. Anything else? Other topics for next time? We also got to try to get some people on the service animal topic. Okay. Any other discussion on this particular item number 9? General public comment. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to announce that this will be my last meeting with the board. I'll be resigning. I'm retiring effective November 30th. And I want to thank you all for having me on the board, and it's a great time.
Well, Bruce, we really appreciate your participation and the time you devoted to this task. Thank you. Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Diana Martinez, is there a second? Chirag. All those in favor? Aye. All right. See you next time, everybody.